conversely, like what we've been saying, and the reason that Bitcoin is growing so much is the antithesis to this system, which we just outlined. Is it feels like, I mean, to you, does it feel like we're in inning 7, 8, 9 of the fiat system collapsing? Like, is it the opposite? Like, how does the average person prepare for what's about to happen?
Yeah. It feels like we're in sort of the exponential part of the curve, right?
Yeah, thank you. That was, yeah. Yep.
I've been in and around this industry for a long time. And so, you had people 20, 30 years ago warning about these things, but at the time, the debt to GDP ratio was relatively contained. The deficit levels were relatively contained. But starting with the global financial crisis, you can look at the charts. You can pull up the charts of our global debt, our US debt, and it just skyrockets. It's the most up only part. And I say we're at the sort of exponential part of the curve, the sort of bending upwards period, because this conversation is now a normal conversation, right? This used to be a fringe conversation.
True.
This is now a conversation that Wall Street analysts have, that CEOs have, that companies have. That's why you see companies putting Bitcoin on their balance sheet. This has become normalized. And we're at the part of the debt accumulation phase where it just starts to get out of hand, right? Like a few years ago, maybe we were paying a couple $100 billion on our debt. That felt manageable. Now it's $1 trillion, right? That feels unmanageable. And it escalates out of control. Any consumer who's been in a high debt situation knows this feeling when it sort of escapes your grasp and sort of runs away from you. And that's the part we're at now. It's just this accelerating part of the curve. I don't think we're at the point of fiat collapse. That could still be years off, but you're going to feel this acceleration. It's going to feel more extreme. It's going to feel more uncomfortable. I could be wrong, but I think that's what's in the cards from a math-based perspective. I just think it's hard to work out of it any other way.
I could not agree with you more, Matt, truly. And speaking of the average person, what do you think, just segueing just a tiny bit, what do you think in terms of just helping the average person and trying to get off this system and into a new lifeboat? What do you think an American, we'll call it a Bitcoin bill, I know Senator Loomis is working on these things. Many people are working on these things in the background. What should it look like in your opinion? Is it no capital gains, a de minimis exemption, legal tender? Like, what should America? Because it feels like this two-parter. What should it look like in your terms, or what would you like to see? But also, it feels like from me, and I know many people I speak to, that a lot of people around the world are looking at America to say, we're waiting to kind of see what they're doing, and which is. It's funny because you feel like game theory, and I'm sure there's stuff going on in the background, right, that none of us even know about, right, on the network. But it does feel like there's a sense of everyone's kind of like looking at each other of like, game theory wants to play out, but at the same time, what is America doing? And then, okay, now we have our plan or whatever. So kind of a two-parter. What would you like to see in a bill? And then also, what is your sense of just around the world of what people are feeling, or what they're waiting for before they jump in?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the first and most important thing is to secure the right to self-sovereignly hold Bitcoin, which I know seems like a basic fundamental, but that was a fundamental that was potentially under threat a handful of years ago. And we need to have that basic right. And that's not, it's not trivial. It's worth remembering that in the 30s, the US government banned the private ownership of gold, right? We don't have a perfect track record in this space. And so making sure that is established as a right. And we've heard great things out of Washington from that perspective. So that's like a starting point. As a broader base, I think some de minimis transactions that aren't tax reportable would be fantastic. I think those fundamental sort of right to mine, right to hold Bitcoin, that's really where I'm focused at a firmament level. I think I would, separately under a different veil, I do love the existence of the U.S. Strategic Bitcoin Reserve. I would love to see that accelerated. We have a substantial holding in gold. I think it makes sense from a geopolitical perspective for reasons we can get into if you want, to also have a substantial portion of Bitcoin on the U.S. balance sheet. So I would love to see that. I do think countries around the world, I actually think it's moving really fast. One challenge maybe that crypto runs into is we all live in a 24/7, 365 move really, really fast perspective. When I look at what's happening from a geopolitical perspective, in terms of Bitcoin adoption, and progress on Bitcoin regulation, I'm actually amazed at the speed, right? We're seeing multiple countries build up positions in Bitcoin. We saw Abu Dhabi, we saw Pakistan, we have El Salvador, we have Bhutan, we have a number of countries around the world that are sitting on Bitcoin hoards, which are not selling them, which is another sort of tacit endorsement. So I see it moving in a positive direction. I think the game theory is playing out. It's just crypto is impatient. The world moves on a slower scale than crypto. So I'm pretty optimistic in terms of what I'm seeing around the world.
Yeah, it is funny you say that. It was, you look at gold, which I would love. Actually, I have a follow up on this as well. But the gold, just in general, it took hundreds and hundreds of years. And now with communication around the globe, it's only been 16 years. So we do get impatient because of our attention span is so short. So when you zoom out, you realize how quick it actually has been. So it's a great point. I would love for you to unpack just a little bit more about just the gold and Bitcoin, strategic Bitcoin reserve, and just kind of how you see that playing a role of whatever it is, budget neutral strategies to accumulate more, your thoughts on that. And because this is something I was going to get into later with, but this is, there's a lot of people in the cypherpunk segment of the Bitcoin crypto world where they see the ethos eroding, in their view, right? So I'd love for you to just unpack some of this and just how you think about this and gold as well. So gold, Bitcoin, how you see these playing. Maybe do we get rid of some of the gold for Bitcoin, or like, what do you see? What are some strategies, the ways you think about it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we could sell some gold and rotate it to Bitcoin. Look, if you look at the global hard asset store of wealth market.
Hold on 1 second. If you are holding your Bitcoin on an exchange still or sharing your keys and your KYC information with a third party, everything you're learning about right now is completely moot. This is your wake-up call. You are only self-sovereign if you alone hold the keys to your wealth. Bitcoin is the first and only asset in human history where humans can actually custody entirely their asset. Custody sounds daunting at first, and believe me, it was for me 10 years ago, and I missed a year or two of massive gains, and I don't want that to be you. It's exactly why you need to talk to my friends, Tony Asback and the Bitcoin Way. His team will train you to do it right the first time. We just interviewed Tony the other day, has 50,000 views, an unbelievable response. People love him and his story and what he has to share and his mission. Head on over to thebitcoinway.com/Brandon to schedule a free 30-minute consultation today. Their 5-star rated service is exactly what you need. So quit sitting on your hands like I did a decade ago and get started today. Again, that's thebitcoinway.com/Brandon. Now back to the show.
Today, your gold is $23 trillion. Bitcoin's, let's say, $2.3 trillion. So it's 9 to 1. If the US government is 100% Bitcoin, 100% gold, they're off market. Right. The market is saying 9 to 1. It would suggest you should sell 10% of your gold and buy Bitcoin just to be neutral. Maybe you want to overweight, have more Bitcoin than the market, et cetera. But I think the government is off weight. One note just to share on why I think it's important for the US, and then I can talk about whether it's good for Bitcoin. A funny thing happened when the Bitcoin reserve was announced, which is Cliff Asness of AQR who's a famous hedge fund investor, wrote a screed about why it was a bad idea. And his commentary was that it's akin to like sort of accepting that there might be another global reserve asset beside the dollar. And the phrase he used was it would be like the US building a Chinese yuan reserve. And I actually think that, to me, encapsulates exactly why we need a Bitcoin reserve, which is that if you're a realist, you're looking at the world today and you're saying we're moving from a world where the US was the hegemonic sole power in the world and the US dollar was it, to a world where that is no longer the case, right? The US dollar's share of global reserves is hovering below 60. The world is considering multiple different alternative reserves. Maybe it will be a brick currency. Maybe it will be the yuan. Maybe it will be the euro. As I look at that, if I'm the US dollar and I'm inviting someone else to sit at the table because I can no longer hold 100% of the table, I'd rather it's a non-political currency than it is a currency of one of my competitors, right? I'd rather it's the US dollar and Bitcoin than it is the US dollar and the yuan. The US dollar and a non-political currency is a better outcome for me. And so I think establishing a US strategic Bitcoin reserve sort of greases the glide planks toward a world where if there is another reserve asset, it's actually an apolitical asset, as opposed to the currency of one of our competitors or peers in the world. And I think that's a better world for the U.S. So that's why I think it makes sense for the U.S. perspective to do it. For Bitcoin, I get the cypherpunk resistance to it, which is there's this irony of governments owning Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say two things to it. One, if your dream of Bitcoin is a dream of it being a globally important monetary asset and being a predominant way people save and even eventually spend in the world.
If you like that clip, then you definitely got to check out this next spicy clip. I think you're really going to like it. Come on, check it out. But if you want the full version, the full interview, then check that out over here. Come on, do it. I'll see you in there.